put him on his back. Thurston, right foot kick, down the ground, into the in goal almost. Hodgson cuts it off. Hodgson taken by Norton. He took him late. Marshall skips away. Marshall's still going. Marshall's got Richards coming up outside. Now inside. Richards pursued. He pushes Johnson away.
The Human Torch was denied a bank loan. Oh, we're alive. Sorry. Tuesday, 28th of May, 2024. You're back for another episode of the Tiger Town podcast with your hosts, Zac and Toby. Little Anchorman reference there for anybody who is of our ilk. I didn't execute it. We were talking about it before the show, but alas, here we are. I did my best. Come on, mate. I'm over here. I'm over here swinging. I'm doing my best here. Tiger Town podcast, as always, brought to you by Best on Ground Digital, bestonggrounddigital.com, digital marketing agency that looks after the little guy and Human Torches. Anything digital marketing related, they are your guys. How are you, Tobe?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. How about yourself?
Well enough is the response that I am giving to people lately. Well enough. I'm vertical. Well, I'm sitting, but I'm vertical. So can't all be complaining.
Exactly. Yeah. You still woke up this morning, so that's a positive.
Absolutely. We've got to be positive at the moment. We've got to alter and shift our perspective.
I'm getting sick of doing that. I feel like it's kind of all we've been doing since we launched this podcast.
It does become, maybe
we're the problem. This has been great.
3 years. 3 years we've been going, or in our third year at least. And how has the Tigers gone since we started? Because I'm starting to wonder, causation versus correlation. Tiger Town podcast.
Look, it's not great for us in terms of the alignment, but look, it is what it is. We started this podcast and we've won 2 wooden spoons. Oh no, that's not good.
Oh, at least things have turned around this year, mate. We're heading in an entirely different trajectory, aren't we?
No, we actually are heading further south.
Like Fiji south or UK south?
Depends on how far around the globe you go.
Friday evening last week, 42-28. That's a bit of a mouthful. Fair few points were scored. 70, in fact, in the game. Tigers went down to the Cowboys, 5 tries to 7. Once again, we lose by 1 or 2 tries, which seems to be a fair pattern, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. Mate, very, very briefly, what did you make of the game?
Look, I think it was, and I think Benji said it, and you've said it so many times, it was a game of moments. That's exactly how it was. It was a game of moments. Nobody had, I guess, the run of the ball for too long at any given time. I mean, I think Cowboys had a very strong start, to say the least, but they couldn't keep that momentum. We got the momentum back. They got momentum back. We got momentum back. And it was just a game of moments. And they just took 2 more than we did.
Turning point for me was the Tuolungi no charge, no penalty, shoulder charge. No penalty for the shoulder charge, which it clearly was. No penalty for the strip, which you think it would be one or the other. Apparently, according to Nothing But West Tigers on Twitter today, or on X, sorry, the NRL have since come out and said that, was it Nothing But West Tigers? It might have been him via Carianis or one of the other journos. I should probably be a little bit more accurate on that. But regardless, the NRL has acknowledged that whilst, yes, it was a shoulder charge and it should have been a penalty, the degree to which it was executed wouldn't have warranted a suspension, which, you're right, mate, you got something on your cheek there.
Sorry.
But, yeah, once again, that doesn't really help us, considering that, it wasn't a pivotal moment at the game at all, 20-16 after coming back from 20-0 down. And to be quite frank, we're actually destroying their edges. Folletti had just run downfield, and we had him at 6s and 7s. So a penalty there, the game becomes anything. And again, it's another moment that we didn't win via internal or external reasons. And you're 100% correct, but it wasn't just a decision or two that went against us, it was again back to a lot of those little bits and pieces, wasn't it?
It was. It was certain moments that were of our own doing, both negative and positive. And then obviously certain moments where I think it's fair to say that there was a little bit of probably hands up in the air sort of moments about how things are passed or bypassed or how things are missed. And, you know, I'm not going to harp on the refs for too long because I actually think the ref on the day did a okay job. I think he was better than what we've had in the past. I think it was Belinda Sharp, wasn't it? I think she did
Belinda, yeah. Belinda was all right. She did not manage
a job.
Once again, though, she did not manage the ruck at all. Outside of that, though, generally she did a good job. They missed an offside from the kick, a direct offside. They also missed a clear, blatant forward pass, both of which led to tries. You mentioned during the week that they missed Lockie Galvin being offside from Buller's try, which is correct. However, I think I argued with you at the time that there has been instances where players have been offside in a kick chase, have come within the 10 but not been involved in the play, and the bunker has actually okayed it with discretion under the under the direction that the player did not impact the play. So I don't think that was fortunate. Well, it's probably fortunate, but I don't think it was incorrect. So yeah, look, those couple of decisions aside, and I just wanted to get those out of the way because, you know, it seems to be a trend. That outside of that, I thought she'd do a relatively good job. So this won't be one of those podcasts. That aside,
no, I think the bunker did a worse job than Belinda did. So, you know, and they have everything. I think they have everything at the disposal. So Belinda did like I said, pretty good job calling it in real time. So, but look, the ones that were, I guess, our own doing, I will be straight up and say I hope that Declan Casey does not get picked again. I think Declan Casey was, for lack of a better term, woeful. Now, he knocked the ball on 2 or 3 times when it was, you know, momentum was with us and the momentum shifted. So, you know, that's one thing. You know, I think directly he halted our momentum 3 times when we had something building. But the thing that annoyed me the most was that our forwards were doing a lot of work, a lot of grunt work. And when they're exhausted, the outside backs need to come in and do those dirty carries. I think he ran for 54 metres the whole game. I think Charlie Staines ran for over 120 again. I don't think Buller cracked the 100 again, but he still ran for 19 runs. So he was doing a lot of those dirty runs, trying to get us just a little bit of field possession. And then when Alex Lobb came on, you know, got his debut game in unfortunate circumstances, he ran for 1 less metre in 10 minutes. So for me, that's just somebody who didn't want to get involved, who was happy to just plonk himself on the thing and hope it came to him. So,
I think Declan Casey played 68 minutes, Casey. Yeah, I got that one wrong. I said that Casey was going to come in and do a serviceable job. I liked what I'd seen in New South Wales Cup. I thought he was a bit of a goer. He had a bad game. I don't know that his ceiling's particularly high. He's on a trainer trial contract. But let's be real. And we spoke before the show about not saying let's be honest, so I changed it. Let's be real. Our centre pairing on the weekend. Our centre pairing on the weekend was Josh Folletti and Declan Casey. You know, Josh Folletti is still eligible for Jersey flag quite easily. He's still 19 years of age. May have even been eligible for Jersey flag SG ball earlier in the year. I don't know if I just mixed those two up. 21's his flag, obviously, so he's eligible for that. He's played the one game prior to the weekend, and then Casey, who's played a handful of games himself, still in the single digits. So that was our edge pairing. Let's not forget also that we then lost Isaiah Papali'i on an edge himself. Then we've got Sam Fainu, who's been playing the house down and we're wrapped with, but he's still a massive rookie on another edge as well, albeit doing a good job. What do you want to say? Like, we had a Jersey Flegg player out there who's played one game, and then we had a New South Wales Cup centre at best in the other position. So, yeah, mate, he had a rough game.
He did,
yeah,
and
okay.
I could be forgiven. I could forgive him for those momentum shifts. That is, that's what happens when you have a rough game. Things don't go your way. I mean, you look at Alamalo, had a very bad 2 or 3 minutes. Knocked the ball on, made a poor read on his wing, and they scored. But he kept trying, he kept running hard, and he scored a try. If Declan Casey had come out, sorry?
And he set up another. He set up 12.
He set up one for Collie.
Yeah, he played himself back into the game. He played himself back in the game, whereas Casey just had a shocker. But I mean, you look at our injuries to our edges. You look at the experience of our centres, as I mentioned. I mean, honestly, if we expected any sort of cohesion on those edges, I know that's not talking about mistakes. So he had a bad game, but in terms of defence and reads and that sort of stuff, against a side like the Cowboys, who are relatively unchanged, and you look at their back line, we stayed in that relatively well for the most part, I believe, considering.
Yeah, and I'm not harping on about that. What I'm harping about,
I'm not criticising you. I'm just adding my own take on the thing that you're talking about. That's all.
But that was my take.
Yeah. So you're mentioning moments again. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many ways that you can look at that game on the weekend. You could talk about inexperience, as we've mentioned. You could talk about the fact that the Cowboys just possessed that little bit of class. And, there was the pass to Nanai in the second half where they scored right at the line. It was just a pinpoint pass from a bloke that runs really, really good lines. Townsend, premiership player, Nanai, current state of origin starter, and just went straight between two 19-year-olds, or an 18-year-old and a 19-year-old. I mean, we want to be hopeful going into these types of games, but we are quite possibly the worst squad in the NRL. Many people believe that's the case, who haven't been playing well. And then we've been decimated by injury and suspension on top of that. So let's not forget as well, and this is not excuse making, but it's more a bit of a reality check. So we've got Dream Buller, who's probably first choice fullback. Charlie Staines is probably at the moment first choice winger, or at least starting choice winger, with Tupou being out. We were missing both of what probably would be our first choice centres, and probably our third choice centre, Naden, as bad as he's been playing. We're missing Stafford Toa, Olam, Naden. We're missing our starting halfback in Aiden Caesar. We're missing our vice captain in John Bateman, and our starting second rower. And we still don't have a lock, so we started Justin Matamua, who just turned 21 on the weekend himself. So those are all key players from our starting 13. And as hopeful as we want to be, all those things being considered, the squad that we have assembled for this season, the degree to which we've been playing, and then we cop all that stuff on top of it, it's rough. We lose Papali'i during the game. When did that happen? That was that the back end of the first half?
In the first half, because
36
was off for the start of the second.
Yep, so the 36 minutes, so we lose him as well. And they essentially, like, you look at the try at the end of the game, they got within a try, essentially. That try at the end of the game was Sullivan just throwing caution to the wind and us losing the ball, and then Dearden upfield with a minute to go just in broken play. I mean, we lost by 2 tries, but it very, very easily could have been 1. It could have been less if some of those tries that they scored that should have been disallowed were. Considering all those things, where does that put the Cowboys? I don't really want to talk about the Cowboys, but is that a reflection on them? Or is it a reflection on this side that they actually are exceeding expectation, but we need to drastically adjust the expectation? Is that what it is?
Well, I think it's fair to say that the Cowboys have been very up and down this year.
Yeah.
I think they were on a 5-game losing streak themselves until they beat Souths at Magic Round. But they do have class across the park. They have the starting Origin 5'8". They have a starting Origin back row, 2 starting Origin back rows. They have an Origin centre. So, and I think they also have an Origin winger. Is Tuolagi on there? No, he didn't get picked, did he? No.
Tuolagi.
I think it's, yeah.
Isn't he their starting
Tuolagi.
winger?
Is he?
He's one of Queensland's starting wingers, is he not?
I didn't know if he got picked. I can't remember. I know Coates got picked. I can't remember who got
He
picked.
certainly did. Yeah, he's playing outside the Hammer. He's picked number 5. Coates is on the other wing. Cobbo's on the bench.
So you've got Holmes, Murray Tuolagi. You've got Cotter, Dearden, Nanai. There was talk of Drinkwater potentially getting a 14 spot.
Drinkwater's been in the Blues squad before.
Yeah. You've got all of these players. You've got premiership winner in the front row in Jordan McLean, Reece Robson, Origin hooker.
Jordan McLean played Origin as well, you remember?
He did too, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's all of that, and they still have Jason Tamalolo on the bench.
Hmm. They're a very good side on paper. They haven't been playing to that, obviously. And I think on the weekend we saw what the Cowboys are this year, which was a lot of... Sorry, just bumped the table. A decent amount of good and then a lot of lapses. And I don't know, it's hard to say because we fought back into that game extremely admirably. The Tigers from the last... Forget 2 years. The Tigers from the last 3 or 4 years would not have gotten back to 20-16 with a breakdown field. They would not have done that. And someone's probably going to correct me in our comments and say, "Oh, well, this happened in 2020." And okay, but we know what I'm trying to say. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is that during that fight back, and there was actually probably a couple of fight backs where we came back at them because they kicked out again. We sort of came back a little bit again. Is that a reflection of the way the Cowboys are playing, or is it a reflection of this Tigers side that is never truly out of a game? And when I say never out of a game, you could look at the full-time scores and the full-time results, and I've made a bit of a habit of talking about how we've lost predominantly this year by a couple of games by essentially a try or two. And I'll go back through and I'll actually read out all the games that we lost by 1 or 2 tries. A two try gap with a penalty goal or 2 or a couple of misconversions could be a 14 or 16 point loss, but it is a couple of tries. So in the Canberra game, emphatic, we lost by 3 tries. We'll forget the wins. It's one of the few times we won't talk about the wins. Dolphins, round 5, lost by 1 try. Dragons lost by 2. However, we've spoken before about how that could have easily been 3 tries apiece if that bounce over Staines' head hadn't happened, because they went down and scored off Lomax there. Against Penrith, we lost 4 tries to 1, so 3 tries. But then we start to get a bit of a pattern going following the Brisbane game. We lost by a single try to the Bulldogs, a single try to the Knights. We lost by 2 tries to the Dolphins, and we lost by 2 tries to the Cowboys. So is it more of a case that this side, despite everything else, is never out of the game? Or on the weekend, at least, was it more of a reflection of the side the Cowboys are on the weekend? Did they let us back in, or did this team fight? I'm going to argue that the team fought. And we're not winning, and I hate not winning. You know me well. I hate not winning, not football, anything. I must win everything. Every discussion we have, every argument we have, every time we take off from the lights, whatever. So I despise losing. But I guess I'm trying to look for something underneath the blanket, and I'm trying to figure out what is the DNA of this side.
Well, I think it's also, with how much expectation there was, and again, we're guilty of it. We had a lot of expectation, especially after the 2 wins. this is the turning point. This is that. It doesn't happen overnight. And this is something that you've talked about quite a bit. We want to win. We want this. We want that. But I don't want to win. I've got to remember too, I don't want to win one game here, one game there, one game here, one game there. I want sustained success. I want to be looking back in 5 years' time and say, remember when we used to suck? That's not us anymore. Because we've made the finals 3 years in a row. We've made the top 4 2 years in a row. We've done this, we've done that. Because we just have that sustained success. And you said it really well about, I can't remember, it was a while ago now, it's probably the start of the season, that there just seems to be some form of like losing within the walls at the Tigers. Like they need to get that out. It's not something that can happen overnight. You know, the juniors have come through like kind of knowing what success looks like, but that doesn't they don't know what that looks like at NRL level. They don't. And it's kind of bled into the walls. And that takes time. That takes time. That takes something major to happen, like a board clean out, like administration changes, like XYZ. And at the same time, it also takes patience. And I know that every Tigers fan, and I'm probably speaking for every single person, we're running very short on patience. But I have to believe that this is going to change soon. I have to believe that, because if I don't, what's the point in following the team? Like, I'm not sitting there being comfortable supporting the team that loses all the time. I have to believe that things will change. I just need to be more patient and, I guess, bite my tongue every once in a while.
So it's irrelevant now. Had we not copped 17 charges this year, which is 6 more than any other side, I think 5 more, than any other side in the NRL, had we not copped the injuries, and I'm not going to claim that we're the only club that has copped that, had we been able to keep more of our players on the field this year, do you think we'd be more than 2 wins at the moment, considering how close many of the games have been?
I'd say, yeah. I'd say there's probably going to be a couple of... Because you think about some of the players that probably have been out from suspension, from injuries, but also have been a little bit down on form. You know, there's a good case that Appy would have developed more of a stronger partnership with his halves. Forwards would be understanding what their position is and solidify that position. There's no chopping and changing. There's no XYZ. You know, there's that, that undeniable cohesion between halves and a fullback that's just starting to develop. So I think that we would have won. We would have probably at least won the Bulldogs game and probably the Knights game if we had everyone that we needed at our disposal. Now, and like you said, we're not the only team that's copying all this. You know, you have a look at the Panthers, and that they're these days, Panthers and Storm these days are known for next cab off the rank, just do your job. Next cab off the rank, just do your job. And unfortunately, what we have at our disposal is the next cab on the rank just doesn't know how to do the job. So, yeah.
And it just seems as though at the start of the year, it looked like our first little month or so, we kept the side together relatively well. And I mean, another name I forgot to mention in there that we're missing was Latu as well. And as much as from far earlier in the show, as much as he's only played a handful of games from the bench and very limited minutes, he's undoubtedly, if not our first choice 14, certainly in the contention there. So that's affecting things as well. But yeah, look, for me, if I go back through the last 8 weeks, there's probably only 2 or maybe 3 games that you could probably deem were unwinnable given what we're trotting out. The Penrith game and the Broncos game. And we actually hung with Penrith for a long time in that game. Bulldogs game, Knights game. The Dolphins game, I believe, certainly was winnable. And then the Cowboys on the weekend, you could probably argue, given the situation we found ourselves, but prior to suspensions and injuries and all that sort of stuff, I think you would probably argue that many of those games are winnable, and that is something that is redundant to look at retroactively or retrospectively, but it is what it is. I mean, moving forward as well. The rest of our draw, I won't say it's soft, but there's more winnable games. And if we can get people on the park, if we can find some form, I don't believe we've played well this year other than the Sharks game at all. We've had patches, but the Sharks game was the only game where we've played well and passes have stuck. One game out of 12. And that can happen for a myriad of factors as well. But the next, I'll read out the rest of the games. And in a minute, we'll talk about the bye, and we'll talk about round 13, we'll talk about halfway through the season, and we'll talk about where we think we sit versus expectations. So following the bye this weekend, we've got the Dragons, Titans, Raiders at home, Roosters away, Melbourne at home, Sharks during the Origin period. I think prior we have Canberra during the Origin period as well. We then have the Rabbits away, the Warriors away, the Cowboys at home, the Knights away, the Rabbits at home, the Eagles at home, a bye, and then Parrot at home. Out of all those clubs, are the Eagles in the 8 at the moment? They'd be on the edge.
I think they're on the edge. They're either in or they're on the edge.
Out of all those clubs that are in the 8, we have the Roosters, Storm, and then we have the Sharks and the Raiders, who are both without their Origin players for those games. 4 games of teams currently in the 8.
The Knights are in there as well.
Are they? They wouldn't be far in? What are they, 7th or something?
7th, yeah.
Okay, that surprises me, actually. I didn't think they'd been going particularly well. They won't be there for long. So, that being said, mate, this weekend coming is round 13. And so, effectively, the halfway point of the season, it's not a pass mark. I don't think you need to be Einstein to say that 2 wins and 9 losses is anything short of a catastrophe. But what would have been a pass mark retrospectively, given that we've sat through half of the season and we've seen a bit of what this team is about and what this team is trying to be? What would have been a pass mark, and how far below that are we? And are there reasons for being below that pass mark, or are we simply not good enough at this stage yet? Unwrap for me.
So, based on who we've played and based on the situation, it's hard to say that this isn't a pass mark. If you look literally at what is happening, who we are, the squad we're rolling out week on week on week on week, the decisions that we're getting against us, things that are happening, I couldn't see us winning many games with the team. Like, for a lot of that, for the last, probably 4 or 5 weeks, 20 to 30% of our team's been a New South Wales Cup team. So, but if we had kept everyone on the park, like you said, a passable mark for me would have been 5 wins. Would have been passable, maybe 6, based on who we played, based on the form of every other team. Now, who that would have been, like, if I had a look at the draw, I wouldn't have thought we would have beat the Sharks, but I would have thought we would have beat Parramatta. We do tend to bring it for that Easter Monday clash. I would have thought we would have beat the Bulldogs, the Knights, and we have had the Panthers' numbers for a while. So, that's 5 games there that I think that we could have won if we had our full-strength side. And potentially one of the Dolphins games, which I don't even know if I've talked about this, but the fact that the game against the Dolphins was counted as our home game, ridiculous. But I think we probably did, but I just want to harp on.
That's just magic. That's magic round in general. It's a disgrace that the NRL allows the Queensland-based teams to not all have mandatory home games. How they don't do that by default Anyway, moving on. So I'll cut you off there.
Cowboys, you can call it.
No.
No,
we live here. Okay. You know how many Cowboys fans live in Brisbane?
Yeah, quite a few.
Everywhere. I can see a flag hanging up across the road. They're everywhere. Because once upon a time, if you hated the Broncos, which many people in Brisbane do, they go for the Cowboys.
Yeah, true.
6. So 6 wins. So you're saying best case scenario was 6 wins?
6 wins.
6 from 11. Is that right?
Yeah.
We're 2 and 9?
2 and 9.
So 6 from 11 is best case scenario. So we're 4 wins back from best case scenario. So at Parmark, split the difference. 4 from 11.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you look at that in context, then we're under a par mark, considering all the context around where this club is, and it is a long road back. People point, and commentators and talking heads and sound bites will point to other teams turning their fortunes around more quickly. Nobody has as ingrained and systemic issues as the West Tigers have had for eons. This is not a Gold Coast Titans all of a sudden winning a couple of tight games and finding a bit of form. This is not the Broncos having all these juniors come through at the same time, plucking Reece Walsh out of the Warriors and then Reynolds out of the Bunnies and finding form last year. Mind you, they just lost to the Titans on the weekend, the Broncos. So
hate the Broncos on here.
Yeah, so all those things being considered, yeah, no doubt, we want more wins. I want more wins more than anybody. I hate it. I hate every minute of it. But it is what it is, and we are where we are. Are you worried about the progression, or is it a case of saying it's not where I want it to be, but I can still see it? Which one of those two?
Well, see, after watching, maybe I can't remember which game it was, but I watched one of the games recently, and I mentioned that for me it looked like everyone had gone back. The team had gone backwards. But when you really that was most likely me just emotional about it and pissed off and angry and just wanting to win. That's all I wanted. Was that sorry?
Just venting slightly.
Just venting slightly. You know, it's hard to get up for these podcasts every once in a while and have a smile on your face. But look, you look back to that game against the Cowboys, and I think every Tigers fan, when they blew out to that 20-0 lead, went, oh, Jesus, another 72-0 thrashing. But the fact that we came back the way we did, and again, everyone's like, oh, but the Cowboys are down on form. The Cowboys were kind of down on form too. 2 weeks earlier, we beat them by 66-16. 3 weeks earlier. Last year, yeah. And they were down on form then. But they still beat us 72-0 because we gave up. We threw our hat in. We threw the hat in. We just didn't care. Whereas this one, it was like, you could tell, you could tell that a lot of that determination and that drive to get back into the game was not led by our senior heads. It was led by our juniors. It was led by Sam. It was led by Galvin. It was led by Folletti. They wanted to get back into the game. And it definitely makes you think. And I was thinking about this on the weekend. It's like, you know, everyone talks about you need these senior heads to, you know, steer the ship, to do this, to do that. At the moment, our seniors are kind of the ones that are dragging us back a little bit. You know, making stupid decisions. You know, Bateman doing something very silly in terms of a lot of his stuff when he gets fired up and gives away a silly penalty. Naden, he's a senior head and he does very stupid shit. A lot of that fight back was our juniors. And discipline. If you look at that and you focus on just that.
Yeah, look at the discipline. Clemmer just got suspended for 3 weeks for a hip drop. Caesar's been out for 4 weeks. Our first choice halfback this year been out for 4 weeks for a hip drop.
Yeah. But so you take all of this, you look at these.
When Bateman's getting frustrated, what's happening? As you said, it's eking out the sides. So we've had a shift where last year our recruits, the senior statesmen we brought in, were the ones that were doing the best job. It's shifted this year, to your point. Whereas the people doing the best job, and the most value we're getting this year is from the juniors, or not from our juniors necessarily, but from the young guns in the side, as you mentioned. Buller's been a little bit up and down, but generally speaking, he's going well. Staines has been okay.
He's had more
Fletty was open the weekend. Alomalo's played a handful of games, and I know he's not young, but he played well on the weekend. Galvin, we know what he's been doing. Bud's been decent since he came back. All with the exception of probably Coruscant. Manapua played very well on the weekend, absolutely. Even Seafarth, who's played less than 50 games, is playing well. Fanua Pole played well on the weekend. So
Fanua Pole was our meter.
136 made off the bench. No, Galvin ran for more. So is it a case that we're actually seeing a riptide happen? Riptide. I'm a surfer, and you don't say riptide. We're seeing an undercurrent happen that is harder and we're seeing a shift where the senior players have dropped off in form and discipline. The side overall is performing similar in terms of losses and not winning, yet who is contributing the most to the side has shifted in terms of experience or youth. And that's the shift that you need to happen. It would be nice if our senior and most overpaid players, Papali'i and Clemmer and Bateman and the likes, even I know Caesar's not overpaid, but he's very experienced, were our better performers as well. Because I suspect that if discipline was there and they were doing what they need to be doing, that the side would be performing better as a whole. But quite possibly, do we see, and Nate in that camp as well, do we see Richardson over in the States at the moment, in the UK at the moment, for the very thing that we're talking about? That this shift has happened where the youth is actually coming through and are the ones keeping us in games. And as much as we've noticed individuals, have we not noticed that as a collective? Possibly. And that's the shift you want to see in a side that is labelling themselves as development and looking to translate into a new era moving forward. Is that a possibility? I'm starting to think that it may well be.
Well, yeah, that's what again, you articulate it a little bit better than I do, but that's what I was getting at, was just this attitude, this shift, this mindset is probably the best way to put it. And this was something that probably wasn't new to anyone coming through, because a lot of these juniors have tasted nothing but success. And so that mindset's just all they have, all they've experienced. And I mentioned a couple of pods ago that one thing that was kind of worrying me, or was concerning, not so much worrying, but just a little bit concerning, was the potential of that, I guess, not so much losing mindset, but just the lack of effort mindset at times could bleed into those juniors, such as the Galvins, such as the Sams. If anything, I think it's driven them even more. I mean, one of the biggest surprise packets by far, and I know you agree with me on this, is Sam. 100%. Biggest surprise packet by far. And he just turned 20. And he is, if anything, he's the one leading the forwards. He's the one leading that intensity, at least. And
you're saying that you're saying that in terms of biggest surprise packet in a side that also contains Lachlan Galvin.
Yeah.
For me, and I've said it countless times, Samuela Fainu has been more impressive than Lockie Galvin, and Galvin has blown everyone away.
Yeah. And that's how you can't, again, everyone's going to say, oh, but look at the wins and losses. That's all anyone cares about. Of course, that's what people care about. Of course. 100%. But
us too.
What I mentioned before was, I don't want to win here, win there, and just to sort of scratch at the 8 and see if we can make it. I want sustained success. And if we look at what the juniors are bringing, and we get those cohesions going in those sort of positions and those players themselves, that is a huge step towards that sustained success. That is 100% the Panthers' blueprint. That's what the Panthers have done. And that's, to an extent, what the Storm have done as well. So I don't want a third consecutive wooden spoon at all. No way. I don't want that. But if it means I have to eat another wooden spoon to be consistently in the finals for the next 10, 15, 20 years, fuck it, I'll do it.
Yeah. I think that there's a multitude of ways to, quote unquote, rebuild a club. and we've chosen the path less travelled that only realistically Penrith do. Even Brisbane, who have a gigantic junior nursery, they don't do it. They pluck people out of every. They've got a lot of juniors in there, but they also pluck players as they need. Penrith do the odd thing, but they do it obviously better than anybody in terms of their production line out west. That's the way that we've gone about it. Canterbury have not done that. Canterbury, whose junior grades are going relatively well at the moment, have gone top down, and they've gone out and they've spent their salary cap as best they can and bought as much strike as they can. It's like a Roosters light model. And I don't think Canterbury in 5 years are going to be much closer than where they are now. I don't think they're going particularly well, considering the side that they have. And to your point, I think that there is ways that it can happen quicker for sides that go the slow, ground up, foundational rebuild, which is rely on investing time and energy and development into youth and play the long game, which is what we're doing. I think it can possibly sometimes happen quicker. You can pull a rabbit out of a hat and you can land a Reece Walsh. That was Brisbane's problem years ago. Oh, just a couple of years ago, sorry. They had a raft of junior talent when your Carrigans and your Haasas and your Piakuras and even some that have moved on to other areas were coming through. But they didn't have a decent enough halfback. They didn't have a serviceable hooker. They had Turpin playing there, who's running around in Cup now. And they didn't have the lightning at the back in Walsh, which was the magic dust. So it can happen quicker. Had Brisbane not got Reynolds and had they not got Reece Walsh, do you think they would have had the success that they're having? No. I don't even want to say that that's anything but objectively something that would not be happening. So it can happen quicker. But the question then goes, well, we're definitely not happening quicker and nothing is falling our way. But are we underneath all of that? Are we still trending in the direction that we should be going? And I think the metrics around that, when you ignore wins, I hate ignoring wins. I will reiterate, public service announcement, I want to be fucking winning fucking football games more than anyone. But are the metrics around what we want to be seeing through a youth-based development, slow rebuild arriving? Are they being shown? I'd argue yes, and here's why. There's a series of players with very, very low levels of experience that are holding their own and even excelling in first grade. Jareen Buller, Lachlan Galvin, and we'll put Sam Fainu, and there's others that we could mention in there as well. Those three, I would argue, are having at least moments of excelling in first grade. All three of them are signed up long-term, and all of them, at the age that they are at, have already shown they've got what it takes. And many of them are in key positions. You could argue an edge back row is a key position. Okay, that metric tick for me. Are we seeing improvement in effort areas? I would argue undoubtedly so. Kick chase is not perfect, it is better. Line speed is not perfect, but it is better. I'd say that our edge defence is not perfect, but it is better, particularly when we don't have to play Declan Casey and Josh Folletti in there. Or Brent Naden, for that matter. And the other thing you would probably say is, do we have some marquees on the horizon that are likely or can come in the upcoming seasons to mix with this youth that we are seeing coming through and hold their own? Yes. We've got Jerome Luai coming, who has been unreal and most likely will probably move to 7 for New South Wales, and deservedly so. And we've got Taruva, who was one of the hottest outside back properties on the market, and himself is only 21. So by all these types of metrics, that's happening. And that's sometimes you can lose the forest for the trees, and you can look too much to 26, 27 and go, oh, we're going to be right there, and forget about the short term. I've bashed Benji for that in the pod this year already and said, you still need to focus now. But if we solely move that to the side and we look exclusively at this in isolation, are we on the track? I would argue, from the metrics I just mentioned, that I think that we are.
Yeah. And again, as I mentioned before, I definitely agree with you because the fact that the attitude shift and the competitive nature and the diehard attitude comes from the juniors is a very clear indication that we are moving in the right direction from that perspective. And it's just, I know we are all sick of waiting. We are all so sick of waiting. I mean, how many times has there a rebuild happened at the Tigers in the last 12 years? I think it started happening under Jason Taylor. Then again, it happened under Ivan Cleary, then under Madge, and it was all like, oh, we're going to, it's going to be a real rebuild, or you're going to get on the bus, or we're going to be defensive minded, or we're going to do X, Y, Z. But all of that was very much surface level changes, all of it. And that's the difference now, in my eyes, is it's gone so much deeper than the surface level changes. We still need some of those surface level changes. Bringing in Luai, stroke of genius. Taruva, again, great signing. I still think there's probably another big signing coming before the end of the year for 2026 or 2025.
I think so, for sure.
And, that's that surface level changes that we were talking about. But it's we kind of had it a little bit in terms of when we had the big four. They were all juniors. They were all coming through. And who knows where we'd be if they all decided to stick together. Who knows where we'd be? So it's one of those things where instead of sitting there and not knowing how to manage a salary cap properly and having four of your guns go off contract at the same time, they're doing the smart thing and they're obviously staggering them. They're making sure that these key players are locked up long term, etc. So I dare anyone to question whether that's not an improvement.
To the people wanting immediate results as well, and me being one of them, but at the expense of what we're currently doing with our current approach. I've heard people critical of Galvin. I've heard people critical of Fuller, not to mention a few others as well. Would you trade someone like Galvin for somebody like Cogger, who might deliver a bit more of a consistent result? No way. But what if Cogger gets you 7 or 8 wins a year instead of how we're travelling so far? Still, no fucking way. And I would argue any black, white and gold faced fanatic out there anywhere to say that they would do that trade. So as much as people are short-term thinkers, us included as well, or a giant chunk of us, we all, I think, are willing to play the long game with certain people. And sometimes we just forget it. And we just forget that every week we push out a first grade side and we want that first grade side to be winning football games. But when you're in the predicament we're in, you can't have it both ways. You cannot build from the ground up from your junior base or with young talent and immediately win. It doesn't happen.
No.
And our history has worked against us. If we'd come off no spoons and we made the semis 3 years ago, people would be copying it far better. But the team we were from 2012 to 2014 was different from 2014 to 2017, was different from 2017 to 2020, was different from 2020 to 20. These are errors. They just happen to be back to back to back to back. And that understandably clouds judgment. But I think that the bye week just gives us an opportunity. It's the halfway season for us. It's the only really real break that this side gets throughout the season, given where our buys happen to land. It gives us a chance to reflect and see, with all the upheaval that's happened 6 months ago, how are things travelling? And I decided, turning the microphone on tonight, to look at the areas where it is positive. I could talk about other areas. I could talk about the fact the Jersey Flegg side is going relatively well at the moment. They lost on the weekend, but they've been going really well with quite a few names that many people haven't actually heard mentioned in our junior pathway systems, which generally means that there's a couple of smokies in there. There's been a lot of talk about our SG ball guys. Harold Matz went extremely well this year. The likes of Anthony Large, who unfortunately got injured earlier, and Makasini, who could be anything, but these kids are 17. That is happening well. The New South Wales Cup side is going awful. But all you need to do is go in and look at the experience and the ages of the guys playing in those sides to realise that we're not playing our best possible New South Wales Cup side. For starters, half of them are up playing NRL at the moment. But we're playing 19-year-olds. We're playing 18-year-olds. Sol Sakuru played his debut game on the weekend and got a try. All you need to do is go back through that list as well. Jordan Miller there at age 19 is starting prop. So we're playing the long game, not just in NRL. We're playing the long game in the grades down as well. There's a lot of reasons to be positive. We're just not getting the wins. So opportunity this week, this bye weekend, for people to take stock, get away from footy for a bit. See, it's all perspective, mate. And I want to sit and wallow in the negative as much as anybody. I'm as miserable following this side in many ways as I ever have been. But take it as an opportunity to change your perspective and look towards some of those positives, like the ones I just rattled off. There is a lot there. You just have to move. You have to move a few things around to see it.
Yeah. Or you could be like Buzz and abuse us for taking a trip during the bye week.
No comment. That bloke is one of the biggest dribblers.
I can't stand that bloke, hey. And then he comes out and he says something along the lines of, I've heard from people who know that Steph wants out. That's like somebody, sitting there on the street going, Bob down the road. Bob said that, that Steph wants out. Oh, how do you know? Oh, because Bob said. You got to trust Bob. He's a muppet. Absolute muppet.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't bother watching it tonight, and I've always enjoyed 360 because I enjoy hearing different opinions, different perspectives. It's the reason I just listen to the other podcasts and like them, because I enjoy hearing multiple people have different takes and perspectives on the same objective thing that's going on. I like hearing different perspectives because it helps me to orient. Well, which way am I leaning? Well, they make a good point. They make okay. All right, but I've stopped watching it. I watched it last night. I saw that segment because somebody on one of the forums had shared it and had said, he went in on the Tigers tonight. I said, well, okay, we lost 8 in a row, probably fair enough. They said Brent Reid went into bat for the Tigers. I was like, that sounds a bit weird. So I went and watched it. I went and watched it last night, but it did not make me want to go back and watch it tonight. He went in and bat for the Tigers because he's good mates with Richo. That's the only reason why. Anyway, let's swing to that you mentioned it. So very briefly, we don't have a game to preview, but we just want to talk about an issue or two before we wrap up. It's been doing the rounds, obviously. So Shane Richardson is over in the United did it again, United Kingdom. I was about to say United States. Maybe that's why I'm thinking UK. He's over
Maybe he's over there looking at some linebackers we need. Maybe he's looking at some wide receivers that would work well for us.
In the US?
Yeah.
Kyler Murray throws a really good forward pass. He's also 5'10", but he's sort of built like Taruva, I reckon. However, so essentially with the bye week this weekend, the RLPA has mandated, I think, 3 days off for players during bye weeks in their training schedule. So subsequently, the Tigers gave all their players the weekend off, 3 days off over the bye week. Benji's taken his family on a short trip to Fiji, apparently, for I think it's 3 days as well. And Richardson is over in England at the moment for a 2-week holiday. Allegedly, according to reports, nothing gets out with his club anymore, which is unequivocally a good thing. So it's all innuendo and scuttlebutt that he's probably not based in reality, but essentially, evidently, it seems as though he's over there to shop a few players. And some of the names that have come up are the likes of Bateman and Staines and Naden. Even Clem has been mentioned in certain circles and possibly over there shopping as well. I couldn't believe the blowback on this. Dead set could not believe. So essentially, and it's not everybody, but it's the same. So many of the talking heads, your mate that you were just talking about a moment ago, Rosie Cheek. So the criticism essentially was that if you've had 8 losses in a row and your team is not going good, then you should not have time off. I would argue if somebody is underperforming They need a break. The break is there anyway. What do they propose and what is the criticism? Do you think that it's more helpful for people who are not quite getting the results that they want to get, with context and extenuating circumstances considered, which there is around injuries and suspensions to key players? Do you not think that some extra time at home or some extra time with the family, an opportunity to recharge, is a good thing?
Oh, because it doesn't fit Buzz's narrative. It doesn't fit, you know, oh, would Wayne do this? Would Bellamy do this? I'm like, who gives a shit? Seriously.
Evidently, I've heard today on that, Bellamy's got the week off because they have a bye. He's holidaying in Brisbane. Wayne Bennett apparently is back on the farm for the weekend because I don't think they have a game, do they? Let's have a look.
I don't know. I don't know who's playing.
They do have a game, sorry. But, yeah, I mean...
Yeah, but...
The argument that teams should not be taking a break or having an opportunity to recharge because they're not going well is literally the opposite of common sense.
Yeah.
But what do you do when you're tired, strung out and stressed? Get an early night. You have an extra break. What do they do when players have had a really long, hard season? They want to get them right for the semi-finals. They give them a break. So why is this a story? It's a story, as you said, just to beat up and bash up.
Well, not only that, remember you mentioned a while ago that when all of these negative stories come out again about us, it always seems to come out either right before a game or something like that. I'm almost certain something came out before the Cowboys game that was negative about us. It's like, yeah, great timing, dickheads, but, I'm sick of you. Everyone that's listened to the pod know I hate the media with a passion. I do. And, conspiracy theories, runs rampant in my head, but it's 100% feels like a vendetta. It feels like they're, obviously it's because us Tigers fans are so supportive and vocal of our team. We read every piece of media that goes out there because we love our team. But that, talking about the positives of our juniors doesn't seem to get as many clicks as it would if you talk about the fact that the coach has taken a 3-day holiday.
It did baffle me on 360, and I shouldn't have. It did baffle me that nobody went into bat to argue the counter. Normally there's always somebody, whether they agree or not, to argue the counterpoint to keep the show going. But when he went in there, all Brent Reid did was argue for his mate Richo. He didn't necessarily sit there and go, well, this is what the Tigers are doing, although he did say, do you not think they're better to the other guys? And they seem to argue not. Anyway, we'll move on from that, because to sit there and try to psychoanalyze or assess the quality on NRL 360 is probably a fool's errand, my friend.
I will say I did love to see Baz's response to Baz and Buzz to his text. That was pretty funny.
Fatty O'Barrell.
For anyone that didn't read it, yeah, Barry O'Farrell. For anyone that didn't read it, he essentially said, I'm going to tell you this so that you shut your fucking mouth. XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. Done.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good response. It was very succinct, and he basically just addressed what I said before. It was exactly what was happening, the time that the players were getting off in accordance with the RLPA contract situation or whatever their policy is. The end. It was very good. It was very succinct. It was very good. Okay. Mate, a bit of news dropped the same day we released the podcast last week, which was that Isaiah Papali'i is signed with the Penrith Panthers from next year. So subsequently, he's released from the final year of his contract. Good for the club or bad for the club?
Well, I will say that was one of my predictions, but I said he was going to go to the Warriors. So
he went the opposite way. So you almost got it completely oppositely wrong. You said he was going to go east. He went west.
Don't. Just don't.
Gotcha.
To be honest, it hasn't been, when we signed him, he hasn't. Whether it's his own doing or whether it's the fact we haven't used him properly, it's probably a mixture of both. It was fair to say that the last 2 weeks prior to his injury / suspension were probably the 2 best weeks he's ever had in a Tigers jersey. But I think we've got enough to cover that spot anyway. I think that we're fine.
You could argue those 2 weeks were. You could argue those 2 weeks were exactly when he was negotiating with rival clubs, because he was told 3 weeks ago. Apparently, ever since he was told, how well has he been playing?
Yeah, I wonder who that sounds like. Oh, did we have another Noffer in our hands? Did we? Oh, okay.
Noffer, who's been essentially sacked from South, not already.
For anyone that's listened the last 3 weeks, we've literally mentioned that every single week on the pod.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So yeah, I think that I think it's frees us up to get more of a marquee player. I'm happy with the movement.
It tells me that they've got their finger on the button. It's taken them 11 games to realise that this is an underperforming roster and exactly where it is underperforming, and they're balancing it and they're getting it done. It's effective, it's efficient, it's cerebral, and they're doing it remarkably well. We found out that he was being shopped, and 2 days later he was gone.
Yeah.
So
because nothing got out.
Kept in.
Absolutely nothing got out.
Shane Richardson gets it done. They've decided Papali'i is excess to requirements, and see ya. And now he's over in the UK. And you know what? I'm backing $1 that he does the same thing, and that Bateman is gone. And he does. And I've spoken before. I love John Bateman. We just haven't gotten value for money, unfortunately, with Johnny Bateman. I love everything about the way he plays and what he represents, but I dare say he's gone next year. And if not 1 or 2 others, I think whoever he wants to get rid of, he will get rid of and find a buyer for, and he will balance the squad out. And if Papali'i going means we free up effectively $750 next year, which is what the final year is supposed to be, $750,000. If he can move on Bateman and 1 or 2 others, we're looking at 1.5 to 2 million of cap space for next year. To balance the squad. And then we start going, okay, let's see where we land. We probably need a second rower. Sam's got 1 spot. We've got Seafarth as a backup. Kapoa's gone. We probably need 1 or 2. We need another centre. We probably need a winger. So these are things that I think will happen, and I think Papali'i is the first domino to fall. And the fact that it has taken 3 months of the season for Richardson and obviously Benji to sit there and go, this isn't working, we're making changes now, shows me that they're not sitting on their hands, that stuff is happening, and it's happening bloody quick.
Yeah. No, 100% agree.
Beautiful. Mate, we've got a bye week this week. I'm backing us in to get the 2 points, which would be good. We haven't earned that in a little while. That joke sucks, but people make it all the time.
The other thing that's most annoying, but the people that are around us, in terms of the Titans and the Rabbitohs, both have a bye as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Excellent. Can't wait for that.
I said it sucks. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know. Sarcasm, mate. Now, we've got Origin next Wednesday, so we will look at doing an Origin preview at our show next week, just in time for Origin, which we're all looking for, and a lot to talk about in the selections there. From the Blues perspective, we won't talk about that tonight. We'll let other areas of the media do that. We'll get to that in due course next week. But outside of that, mate, I think it's time to take stock at the season. Let's focus on the positives. Hopefully, if we're able to watch a junior game or 2, if they are televised, I'll have to double check. They're not generally, but follow along with that, and we'll recoup and regroup ahead for next week.
Yep. Yeah, I think we did quite well, considering we didn't really have a game to talk about, and we didn't really talk about the game prior either. We just, again, took stock, and bit of a different approach than what we've generally had during the regular season, but hopefully it gave our listeners a little bit more of a positive perspective to focus on.
Yeah, exactly right. And we need it as much as anybody. And I guess with the podcast being recorded on a Tuesday night, folks, generally we have, and from last Friday we have had a bit of time to sort of process and all that sort of stuff as well. So often we're not as reactionary as we may be if we did it live.
Yeah.
Might have to hit the mute button several thousand times, I think.
Yeah. No, we'd definitely be barred for
anything else you want to add before we wrap up the show?
No, not really. No.
Okay. All right. Well, once again, on that note, thanks to our sponsors, Best on Ground Digital, bestongrounddigital.com, the digital marketing agency that looks after the little guy. They are brilliant, bestongrounddigital.com. They will not steer you wrong. You will find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple, Instagram, and Toby?
YouTube.
Yeah, that we're recording right now. Every week I get 4. I always miss one. It's a different one every week.
You just like to give me something to say.
I like to keep you in the PSAs, mate. Make you part of it. I'm being inclusive. You're welcome. Speaking of all of those platforms, we often and always, not often, always, without fail. Be nice if it's returned. Come on, boys, pull your socks up. Let's get it happening. West Tigers podcast and the West Tigers podcast forum and the Ambush on Facebook. They are all in cahoots. They're all connected. The same organisers, for the most part, are involved in all three. Go on over and follow those. And I've got a new one for our listeners and for you, Toby. The West Tigers Faithful podcast is a brand new, what'd you say? Podcast. Brand new team on the scene. And I had to listen to it just during the week, and quality stuff. West Tigers Faithful podcast. I can recommend it to everybody to get out there and give those guys a spin. They know their stuff, and a lot of junior talk. So it's good to see It's good to see any West Tigers media, but especially a few new hands who know what they're talking about. Give it a crack. So good on them, and welcome to the West Tigers amateur media
podcast
zeitgeist. Yeah, exactly right. Mate, we don't have any bold predictions to do. We don't have anything else really to say. Anything else you want to add? 2 points this week?
Prediction. Yeah.
That's not very bold.
No. Okay. We're going to get 4 points?
Well, on that complete deadpan of a note, I'm going to leave us with nothing but go the mighty West Tigers.
Up the Tigers.